Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand and let's recite. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We would like to welcome each of you to our City Council meeting this evening. We appreciate that you've taken time out of your day to attend our meeting, to participate, and see your local government at work. To start the meeting, we have laid out some guidelines for decorum and civility to make sure people feel comfortable and safe to participate. Please be respectful during people's comments. Avoid cheering or jeering because this could cause someone to feel intimidated. Please also help take care of this historic meeting room by not standing on furniture or leaning against decorative pieces. If you have a sign, prop, or other piece of equipment, please make sure that it does not cause distraction or block other people's views. Signs wider than your chair will be displayed in the hall. Also, items like sticks and dowels are not allowed. Please do not approach the dais. If you have something to pass out, our council staff, who is in attendance today, will be there to assist you. Our staff is here to help. If you need any assistance or have any questions, please raise your hand, and our staff will help you. Also, we would like to recognize that 2 minutes of comment time may not be long enough to get all of your thoughts outlined tonight. Please visit our website or refer to the contact information sheets by the speaker cards for information about other ways to share your comments with the council via email, phone. So for our first item of business, we would like to welcome Mayor Biskupski here to present the budget. And this is her first one, so it's an exciting time for us here at the City Council. Mayor.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Rogers, members of the City Council, and our guests. Tonight, I am pleased to be presenting to the City Council and the people of Salt Lake City a fiscally responsible budget. This budget recommendation provides for our city employees, prioritizes the city's infrastructure and maintenance needs, funds programs important to Salt Lake City's values, and makes key investments in city government operations, all in line with the vision I laid out in my State of a City address. Guided by principle and fiscal discipline, we will meet these goals without raising taxes or laying off employees, and while maintaining a relatively flat budget. This budget is also the beginning of a conversation I intend to continue throughout the year between my office, this council, and the people we serve. We must begin this conversation with an understanding of where we are today as a city. Since the Great Recession, Salt Lake City has been operating with a gap between ongoing expenses and ongoing revenue. The money we spend to cover expenses has outpaced what we generate from ongoing revenue sources, such as property taxes and sales tax. In order to present a balanced budget and to provide services to residents, we are relying on one-time revenue sources to pay for ongoing needs. With a strong economy, we must now work to remedy this situation. Moving away from this model will put Salt Lake City on firmer financial ground and allow us to supplement our rainy day fund to insulate us from any future financial crisis. I am pleased to say that in my recommended budget, we have reduced one-time funds used to balance the budget from a high of $7.7 million last year to $6.7 million this year. While this will be a multi-year effort, this is a step in the right direction. We must also acknowledge other hard truths about the city's budget. Salt Lake City has a number of debt obligations that we should give careful consideration to in this budget and in the future. While Salt Lake City maintains a AAA bond rating, we have at a fairly regular rate since 1999, issued debt to fund a number of new capital projects. Much of this debt is found and serviced in the city's Capital Improvement Project Fund, or CIP. Beginning in fiscal year 2017, our payments on debt serviced through CIP will nearly double, and the cash available to fund pay-as-you-go projects will drop in half for the next 4 years. CIP has been a great asset to our city, providing for projects ranging from new facilities, park improvements, and to transportation upgrades. Based on an analysis of our deferred maintenance needs that was completed in 1999, the city has been allocating between 7% and 9% of our CIP budget. With this fund now being further strained by the city's debt service needs, I believe it is necessary to re-examine the policy behind this fund, a process my office will begin this year. As a first step, my recommended budget proposes moving some basic maintenance of city parks and facilities out of this program and into the general fund. With our deferred maintenance needs growing at a rapid rate, I do not believe it is a prudent policy to continue including basic maintenance needs in a funding program which is shrinking, is competitive, and allows for wants to be prioritized over our needs. I have provided $500,000 in the general fund for park and facility maintenance. While this is a decrease in the amount of funding provided last year, I believe with our debt service burden growing, the appropriate level of funding would not have been allocated through the CIP process this year or in future years. This move guarantees funds for maintenance of critical community assets. Moving forward, basic maintenance will remain in the general fund, a reminder of our city's obligation to appropriately care for the assets we currently have. To be clear, the debt paid through our general fund is not the only debt this city and its residents are shouldering. Salt Lake City has asked its residents to bond for projects like our public safety building. These bonds approved by voters have allowed the city to borrow against increases in property taxes. The city has also guaranteed debt on behalf of the RDA. City residents have recognized the need for certain large projects, and as city leaders, we must now prioritize caring for the facilities they have generously approved. When we choose to invest, regardless of whether the funding comes from our general fund or through voter-approved bonding, we must also be transparent about future maintenance costs and plan for the future revenue to cover them. And where we make investments matters as well. City residents have known for some time that we must turn our focus to the basics, our needs and not our wants. To focus on storm drains and sewer systems and the roads we use to get to and from our homes and businesses, and on which millions of dollars of goods are carried on a daily basis. A pavement conditions report prepared for the City Council by the experts in the city's engineering and transportation department highlights the need we have when it comes to this major asset in our city. The report shows more than half of our city's streets require full repavement or overlays. Of the 1,855 lane miles in our city, over 1,200 miles are rated as poor or very poor. That is 66% of our city's roadway. The City Council has included infrastructure in their strategic plan this year, and my office is joining them in this long-term effort. I know some members of this council are interested in exploring the sales tax option related to the construction of the new prison to help deal with our infrastructure needs. During this year's legislative session, my team lobbied to keep this option available to the city. However, I am not prepared to utilize this tax this year and would want public input before we moved in that direction. Plus, the city does not currently have a strategic plan to utilize this tax option. And I request we explore every option available to us before we turn to a tax increase. I look forward to working with the council and interested parties to continue finding solutions to our infrastructure funding needs. This year, my proposed budget increases overall road and sidewalk funding by 50%. A large share of this increase comes from a prioritization of roadway projects in the city's west side. The funding for these projects was previously secured from the state, but the money was never utilized, keeping these important projects from moving forward. With our infrastructure in its current state, we must move away from a wait-and-see policy and move forward with basic infrastructure projects we have funding for. These projects will significantly improve the roadway and access to a key economic area of our city along 500 and 700 South on the west side. Nearly 16% of our city's GDP is driven by manufacturing, trade, and transportation, and this is growing. We continue to be the crossroads of the West. With our airport redevelopment project now expanding to include the northern terminal, we should expect and encourage more cargo and goods to flow in and out of the city's warehouses and manufacturing spaces. Finally, investing in this infrastructure is good for the city's economy and strengthens our future revenue prospects. Other road and transportation projects proposed in my budget, including $300,000 in funding for a needed traffic light timing calibration, bus stop improvements, pavement overlays, ADA improvements, and sidewalk rehabilitation will help all of us move around our city more easily. And for some of you who may have encountered difficulty while parking in the city, I am proposing a reprieve or a bit of a pardon. This proposed amnesty program will be available between August and October of this year and will allow for a one-time reduction in unpaid parking tickets in exchange for a donation of cash or canned goods to a local nonprofit. We estimate the average citation will be reduced by approximately $110, and the amnesty program will generate revenue of $320,000, not to mention the resources we will generate for those in need. So if you have outstanding citations issued before July 1st, 2014, consider taking advantage of this proposed program. And if you occasionally make a mistake on a parking meter keypad, I believe you should receive a little help as well. I am also proposing a one-time dismissal for clearly miskeyed entries. This is a frustrating ticket to receive, one compounded by the inability of the city's parking enforcement officers to provide relief due to previous administrative policy. This change will cost us approximately $60,000, but is in line with our desire to be a welcoming and accessible city. To appropriately service the residents and businesses of our growing city, our employees must be able to move around the city and sometimes the state efficiently. Our city's aging fleet is making this difficult, especially for members of our police department who have a strong need to work with agencies across the state. We have a policy in place requiring police officers planning to leave the Wasatch Front in a city vehicle to obtain an inspection. This policy was adopted in 2015 after old fleet vehicles repeatedly broke down from the city limits, far from the city limits, costing the city time and money. This isn't something our city's public safety officers or any city employee should have to deal with. And this type of policy isn't a way to address our city's underlying need. Our city's fleet and fleet fund must be managed more effectively. We have aging vehicles in every department. Fleet employees have done a great job of working to maintain these vehicles, but without an effective plan for replacement, they have been simply triaging a larger problem. My office is working with the leadership in public services to develop a long-term strategic plan for fleet replacement. This plan will also include significant guidance from my proposed Department of Sustainability to ensure the new vehicles we purchase are the most fuel efficient and environmentally friendly of each model type. In this year's budget, we will begin to address this issue by providing fleet services with $250,000 in realized fuel cost savings. These funds will be prioritized to replace some of our aging vehicles. This will help to make our fleet more efficient, greener, and safer. The greatest asset our city has is not our fleet or our facilities. It is our people. The experts who keep Salt Lake City moving forward every day. Investing in them is the best time and money we can spend. Just look at our dedicated 911 dispatchers. For years, they have been working mandatory overtime at one of the hardest jobs in the city. When I delivered my State of the City address, I asked leaders to find solutions for this difficult work environment. As part of this plan, dispatchers were surveyed. Almost universally, there was a high level of dedication indicative of all our city employees and a desire for cross-training so they could do even more for the residents of Salt Lake City. I am happy to say we have already taken steps to resolve the staffing issue, and I thank the City Council for helping to make this a reality by approving our budget amendment requested for 10 new dispatchers, a change I have also included in this budget. The dispatchers have also been working with leaders to develop a long-term plan, and I am grateful for their tireless efforts. This budget reflects my continuing effort to empower employees at all levels and to ensure Salt Lake City is an equitable, respectful, and safe place to work. First, I am proposing a 1.25% increase in salary for all non-represented employees. We are continuing our negotiations with our represented employees, and I am hopeful we will reach an agreement over the next few weeks. To build equity, we have also identified a number of employees who are not currently being paid at market rate. These city employees will receive a larger pay increase to bring them to market rate, along with the universal increase other employees are receiving. Our city health care benefits will be expanded to cover new treatments and services, such as additional therapy hours for autism. We will also, once again, front-load employee health savings accounts to help plan for and deal with deductibles and other expenses. I am also allocating funding to begin implementing the Employee University system I spoke about in my State of the City address. The Human Resources team has identified a learning management system which will give city employees access to thousands of trainings. These trainings range from very technical to mandatory types, such as the harassment training all employees are required to take. Employees will be able to improve their skills, learn new and efficient techniques, and city managers will be able to universally encourage and track professional development. Currently, several trainings are required by city policy and state statute, including sexual harassment training for all and drug and alcohol awareness training for those operating machinery in our city. Right now, our human resource staff has no way of tracking these trainings. This system will help us stay in compliance with the city's policies and state statutes that we must follow. I am also proposing to fund 2 new positions, including a gang intervention case manager with the police department, and permanently fund the diversity outreach specialist with the fire department. These are 2 critical roles that have been identified within public safety. Because of our shared goals to address homelessness, I am continuing to fund the city's host social worker program by maintaining positions which were vacant last year, but will be utilized as we carefully and deliberately grow this program. In coordination with the Salt Lake City Police Department, we will initially fund 5 positions and 3 more social workers later this year through a budget amendment as this new program grows. These social workers and this program are key to the ongoing work in compassionately dealing with our homelessness crisis, and the City Council should be applauded for initiating the creation of this program. And as the city moves forward, generating more revenue will be key to our future success. It is in the city's best interest for this council and my office to stand united in our economic development efforts. Today, I stood on the roof of the historic Walker Center with Jason Mathis, Lane Beatty, Natalie Gochner, and the governor, along with many others, to kick off the next phase of the Downtown Rising Plan. This plan will build on the city's downtown master plan, which the council will also hear about tonight. We have a tremendous amount of energy and initiative coming from various parts of the state to build a stronger economy in Salt Lake City. And it is time for us to lead as only the capital city can. In this budget, I have proposed a strategic realignment of the city's economic agencies, including the creation of a cabinet-level department for economic development. This proposed department will be carved out of the city's current Department of Community and Economic Development, essentially splitting the 2 functions of this existing department into 2 separate agencies. As you will see in this proposed budget, this change will include a division of the existing budget and staffing. We will also shift the redevelopment agency within this department, allowing for greater cooperation while preserving the unique autonomy of the RDA. The Economic Development Department will be led by a strong economic expert with extensive business and regional development experience, able to coordinate city resources. I will announce my choice for this position early next week. The RDA component will be fully serviced by the newly appointed Economic Development Director, current staff, and led by the Chief Administrative Officer within the Economic Development Department. Tonight, I am pleased to announce my choice for the Chief Administrative Officer, Justin Beliveau, and I encourage the City Council to approve this appointment. The other arm to this new department will focus on business development, and the Arts Council will be moved into this division to ensure we fully realize the economic engine arts and culture bring to this city. The overall fiscal impact of this change to the general operating budget this year will be just over $60,000. For years, without clear direction or vision, the Division of Economic Development has been floundering under the current structure. City and economic advocates like those that stood on the roof of the Walker Center today and will be advocating for the downtown plan tonight deserve to have a strong resource in the city to support their work. It's time for the capital city to embrace our role in the state's economy and move forward as strong leaders in economic development. Let's work together to get this right. As reflected in my proposed budget, this change isn't the unchecked growth of government or a power grab. It's creating an efficient and effective tool for rebuilding and building a robust economy. In fact, with the RDA more closely aligned with this department, the policy decisions made by the City Council and made by them as acting as the board of the RDA will inherently have greater impact on the overall economic picture of the city. This change brings the mayor's office and the council closer together, not further apart. My vision for this new department will be to support and advocate for local businesses, both large and small. We will also continue to provide services like our loan and startup programs. As well, we will work to attract complementary new businesses to our local economy. I am proposing additional efficiency changes in the Department of Community and Neighborhood as well. My recommendation includes funding for 2 new full-time positions in planning and licensing. These individuals will be focused fully on customer service, helping to alleviate wait times in the department, which have frustrated residents and cost businesses money. The other shift in city operations I am proposing is to elevate the sustainability division to a full department. Our natural resources and the quality of the air we breathe are top priorities for Salt Lake City residents. Because the Office of Sustainability is appropriately staffed and financed by the city's Refuse Enterprise Fund, this change will have limited impact on the general fund. However, I am proposing the suspension of the city's solar permit fee. This suspension is in line with the goals of the new Department of Sustainability and will make it more cost-effective for homeowners to install solar panels. This loss of revenue from the fee will be offset by a transfer from the energy and environment portion of the Refuse Fund. Before I end tonight, I want to take time to thank all of those involved in crafting this budget. We asked department heads and division leaders to find efficiencies and areas they could cut, a stressful task for any leader. Yet every single one of them showed up and demonstrated in-depth knowledge of their departments, creating cost-effective operations which have led us to a balanced budget. Thank you. And to our finance experts, many of whom are here this evening, I want to express my gratitude for your expertise and candor through this process. Gina Chamness, our finance director, John Voigt, our budget manager, Marina Scott, our city treasurer, and Mary Beth Thompson, our director of financial operations, along with their analysts, worked hand in hand with me to create this fiscally responsible budget. Your advice was not colored by politics, only the interest of sound financial policies for the city we serve, and I thank you. I want to end tonight by expressing my respect for this council. Your priorities of homelessness, economic development, and infrastructure align exactly with my priorities and the priorities of the people who live here. The budget process is the nuts and bolts of government and represents the execution of our priorities and vision. I know we can forge a collaborative path forward to reach our shared goals. Please know my door remains open to all of you. If you have any questions as you pore over this budget, please contact me. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Before you is a fiscally responsible budget which cares for our city employees, begins to address long-term problems, and finds funding for programs important to the identity of our city, a city for everyone. I respectfully request your thoughtful attention to my recommendations and look forward to future discussions with each of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Biskupski. We actually are just going to take about a 10-minute break. For those of you who are here for the budget that are leaving, feel free to leave, but we'd love you to stay. And until then, we'll come back here in about 10 minutes, so about 7:50. I will call two people at a time. The first person, please come forward to the microphone, and the second person, please be ready to follow. Comment time is limited to 2 minutes per person, and you cannot combine time with another speaker. As a reminder, please help create a civil and respectful meeting. Be respectful during other people's comments. No loud noises or other disruptions. Do not block other people's views with signs or other items, and allow council staff to help pass out any handouts that you might have. The downtown plan, the first comment would be from Michael Fife, followed by Brian, and I'm sorry, Brian, is it Tonofetti or Tonetti? There you go. You're next.
Hey, I'm Mike Fife. I was one of the 2 planning commissioners on the Downtown Plan Committee. I went to all the committee briefings, most of the big public outreach efforts, and participated vocally in Planning Commission. I think the outreach that was done for this was stellar. As we got more and more input, the plan improved as we went along the path. And I heartily support your endorsing this plan. There is one thing, though, that I brought up continually that I'd like to bring up again tonight, and that is outdoor recreation space. If the plan is successful, we're going to have 15,000 more residents downtown, thousands more jobs. If the plan is successful, it's going to be an even more walkable and vibrant community. If the plan is successful, we're going to have more families living downtown with children. And those children are going to need a place to ride their bike, to play ball sports, to ride their skateboards. And I don't think that there's kind of a framework in the downtown plan for that, but I think it needs to be addressed more specifically as we go through the process, maybe with the Downtown Rising process or something like that. Also, office workers like a place to go and eat lunch outside or to unwind after work. So I think I would encourage the council to keep that in mind as we're doing plans for the downtown, that we make sure that there's open space for all these residents that are coming in. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fife.
Hi, my name is Brian Tonetti, and I am the co-director and founder of the Seven Canyons Trust. And for those of you who don't know, we're a brand new nonprofit working to daylight and rehabilitate the Seven Canyon Creeks from City to Little Cottonwood Creek, restoring beauty and health to the hydrology of the Salt Lake Valley. And we're here to show our support for the downtown plan and its inclusion of the daylighting of City Creek. And basically, the inclusion of the daylighting of City Creek since its 1962 second century plan. We're hopeful that through this plan, we can begin to daylight City Creek as a demonstration project for the other 20 miles of currently buried creek. And as developers come to the city through the PUD process or for approval, we're hopeful that through this plan, the city can encourage these developers to consider the feasibility of daylighting. Developments within sort of a block radius of these underground culverts could potentially be feasible for daylighting. And incentives such as increased building heights or densities could further incentivize these developers to consider daylighting. And we have a little faith that these developers, if they know about the underground creeks and the potential to bring them up as an amenity, that they will consider the feasibility of daylighting, as it could potentially increase their bottom lines as well. And case studies around the country have shown that it's much easier and cheaper to take advantage of new developments, existing site disturbance, and construction crews to daylight and uncover these underground creeks rather than going back and spending millions of dollars to sort of undo our past mistakes. So thank you.
Thank you. Bernie Hart, followed by Christina Robb.
I have to say I'm a little remiss. I'm new to the city, and I haven't had a chance to study the plan, but I have sat on planning commissions, and I am aware of densities, and I have a little anxiety because I don't know if it's a groupthink or whatever happening. And when this young man mentions daylight, I was in Sugar House the other day, and I felt I was in the Grand Canyon, and I couldn't see over the rim, and I was getting cases of claustrophobia because there was nothing to see but cement and bricks and mortar, and I couldn't see a tree. And in the community of Utah as a whole, how we treat land and how we develop is often done, and I'm hoping, and I think I moved to the city because it is a fine, progressive little light in the middle of a strange culture for me, but I have to be on guard or aware when I see Sugar House, and and living in this area, I don't want to go for a walk and be in the Grand Canyon, so I'm hoping that's addressed in your plan, and the density isn't looked at as just a cash cow or a way to get more tax dollars per acre, or a developer to get more out of a piece of land. So thank you very much. Thank you. Glad to be in Salt Lake.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina Raub, and I'm the Executive Director of the Salt Lake Gallery Stroll. The Salt Lake Gallery Stroll has been around for 30 plus years, and we represent 40 galleries and arts-related businesses, as well as our partners and sponsors, which is a large part of the cultural influence in Salt Lake City. We represent a diversity of visual arts, all of Salt Lake City, but tonight we want to talk about specifically the downtown plan. One thing that happens often in Salt Lake is creativity and arts are often lumped into words like districts, and economic development. And we're really excited to see a plan that's looking at the arts as its own economic propeller. We're also excited to be in a culture that is propagated by this plan, where our organization, which moves people from place to enjoy the arts, are receiving the attention that they deserve. For example, over on the west side, where we have a lot of crime and safety issues that are affecting the ability of our organizations to stay open during Gallery Stroll, are very much affected by the cultural core part of the plan. So we really want to thank Molly and the Planning Commission and everybody who's done the work to make sure that there are storefronts developed and placemaking happening to make our event and the arts and culture thrive in Salt Lake. Thanks.
James Alfondre, followed by Jesse Dean.
Good evening. My name is James Alfondre. It's a pleasure to be here. I am with the Kentlands Initiative. I'm the Executive Director, and we've been working with the Granary District neighborhood that's called out on this plan to help spearhead its revitalization for the last 7+ years. I'm here to voice my support for the Downtown Master Plan, and I'd like to commend Molly and her team for the job they've done with this immense undertaking. I support this plan because it aims to foster livability. How do we continue to make downtown Salt Lake City the most livable, desirable urban area in Utah? If we can achieve that by creating places for people first, for the human scale, everything else will follow. Jobs, we really have to start competing with Utah County and not having our front-runner trains going down there full of people, but keeping the jobs here where the workforce wants to live. Jobs will follow, people will follow, investment, diversity, and so on. This plan starts to put a framework around how to make the center of Utah more livable. One of the ways the plan points out to do so is looking at our streets and how we can use them more efficiently. The Granary District neighborhood has been on the forefront of this movement, and this plan has taken into consideration our work, which we fully support. Looking at our streets differently, and not as just spaces for cars, but spaces for businesses, beer gardens, dancing, vegetable gardens, etc., is a great way to increase livability. For these reasons, I support this plan. I'd also like to mention, I think having the development community get the design that goes into creating these places that people want to live and be a part of is also a really important aspect of implementation of this plan. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jesse Dean, and I'm the Director of Urban Development for the Downtown Alliance. I'm here representing the Downtown Alliance and downtown business and property owners, and plan to speak in support of the Downtown Master Plan. Before I continue, I'd like to first acknowledge the planning staff who has worked so hard to make this document a reality. And they've worked tirelessly with the Downtown Alliance and with the downtown property owners. Nora Shepard, former planning director Will Summercorn, that's how long this plan has been under process, and Nick Norris, and especially Molly Robinson. They have been thoughtful and collaborative from day one, and we really deeply appreciate that. The Downtown Master Plan is an excellent visioning and implementation document, and it will provide City Council a great foundation to be able to build for the future of downtown Salt Lake City. But it is not a living and breathing document. We ask that the Salt Lake City Council, the Mayor's Office, and all other regulatory bodies in the city think about how the master plan is used, and also look to other plans like the Downtown Rising Plan to help implement and make sure that we are moving our city forward and building a stronger community that is the regional center for culture, commerce, and entertainment. I really like what James Alfondra just said about working with the development community to make sure that this plan is successful. Without the development community, I feel like a lot of our parcels will not be developed, and we need to be cognizant of that and make sure that we have a plan that is flexible enough to make sure that we're able to complete all of the goals that we have for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. George Chapman, followed by Nate Seacrest.
Council members, I urge you not to approve the downtown plan. This is ridiculous. You asked them last week to make sure the transit plan is part of the downtown plan. They have $100 million locally funded projects with the 2 rail lines in there. These are TRAX lines on the First South and also on the TRAX extension. Those $100 million could be better used. These are local funds, remember. They could be better used for bus service in our areas. Lisa, buses stop at 8:30. James, you have practically no buses after 8. Same with you, Andrew. Stan, buses stop at 8:30 in the avenues, because if you put this into effect, you're going to kill all neighborhood bus service expansion. Don't let the rails stay in there. You also have grand boulevards on 5th and 6th South, which is supposed to be tree-lined. I forgot to, well, I did tell you. Remember the car lots there? They don't like trees. They don't like the birds and the poop and all that stuff. And if you don't believe that, look what happened with Garf. They took away the trees because Garf wants a car lot for the whole block. It's not walkable. If you want a walkable downtown, you got to get rid of the car lots. And Sunlight, they're absolutely right. If you have canyons of concrete and steel, it's not conducive to walkability. I urge you not to approve this plan. The mayor's right. We need to prioritize projects, and these projects are not being prioritized. We should be putting all the transit plans together and judging them. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, George.
Good evening, council members. Nate Seacrest on behalf of Reagan Outdoor Advertising. We have no objection to the general plan, but we do take issue with the inclusion of billboards in the plan in 5 different places, specifically calling for the elimination of billboards from downtown. I don't think it's an appropriate thing for a city to do, to target a specific industry for eradication within a downtown area. No other industry is targeted in this way. Beyond that, we feel that we can work well with the city to try to find solutions where billboards may be an issue for some people. And having this in the master plan potentially ties the city's hands as we try to find reasonable workarounds that we as the city and as property owners, the people interested in what happens, may be open to us as we approach these things. Again, we have no problem with the general plan. We just object to being specifically targeted by it as an industry that is targeted for elimination. Thank you.
Dave Iltis, followed by Marie Taylor. And that is the last card I have in regards to the downtown plan. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in regards to this? All right.
My name's Dave Iltis. I'm with Cycling Utah. I wanted to comment on the plan in that it needs a much grander vision than it has. The plan mentions very little about traffic mitigation, very little about alternative transport. I mean, it does mention the streetcar, but you have grand boulevards in there with no bike lanes on them. You need to be looking at a vision for this plan that moves in the direction that many progressive European cities are moving, which is a car-free downtown. You need to be looking at pedestrian malls, for example, on pedestrian and maybe a pedestrian bus mall on Main Street, removing car traffic there. You have very little mentioned about parking in here. It's hardly mentioned whatsoever. You need to look at increasing parking fees and decreasing parking spaces, in particular the surface lots, but also just overall decreasing the number of parking spaces and putting those on the outskirts of downtown so that once people are there, they walk around and it becomes a vibrant downtown rather than a place to jump in your car and drive 6 blocks, Green Bike notwithstanding, which has done a wonderful job downtown. You need to look at having in there a vision of retail markets, on street or, a grand market similar to some other cities. Regarding the convention center hotel, it's completely inadequate in terms of the size. So an 800 to 1,200 room hotel, if you look at the hotels in Las Vegas, this is like, a drop in the bucket compared to the 4,000 to 7,000 room hotels that they have in Las Vegas. And if you want to compete, you need a larger hotel, not one that is going to be obsolete by the time you build it, which is what's going to happen with this one. The mid-block network is great, and lastly, because of the growth in the valley, you're going to need to have increased density of housing, drastically increased housing heights and density downtown. So I don't think you should approve it as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iltis.
I was a planning commissioner when Molly very first arrived into town. She was our brand new planner, and she's brought a lot of sophistication and experience with her, but she's also respected us as a city, and I've really appreciated that she hasn't, come in and sort of told us hokey people like what we needed to have happen, and she really interacted with us as a commission, but also, as Michael Fife was saying, the outreach. I was getting kind of excited there for a minute and hoping that the mayor was going to forgive the speeding tickets on 300 South, but unfortunately that didn't happen. I did want to say that an awful lot has happened in the recent last few years on both 2nd South and 300 South, and I thought that we might need to just let the dust settle just a little bit before we get that new line in on 1st South, perhaps spend some time getting some of the proposed stops and things established, but I would like to have a little bit more time before that goes. And I actually live between 1st and 2nd South on 11th East. And I liked the other comments about daylighting some of the rivers, and I agree with the gentleman who said that sometimes you feel like you're just walking around in a cavern, and I'm a little disappointed that there haven't been more cut-throughs with some of the alleys. I know I don't really like just walking down the street with cars next to me, and perhaps some of the alleyways can be captured for some pedestrian cut-throughs.
Thank you. I don't have any more comment cards in regards to this, so council members, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close this public hearing and defer action to a future date. Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Penfold and second by Councilmember Kitchen to close in public hearing and defer action to a later date.
Mr. Chair, may I just ask a quick question of staff? Nick, are you the staff person on this? Russell,
Did you have a comment?
Mr. Webster, do you have a comment that you'd like to make? Well, if it's a general comment, that will be coming up.
Russell, can I just ask a quick question? I'm going to support my motion, but I wanted to get a clarification about if any modifications have been made at this point to the plan in relationship specifically to references to the transit plan. Do you know if those have been made?
And Molly can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the plan, the downtown plan, is largely based on the Downtown in Motion plan, which is an adopted part of the Transportation Master Plan.
So last week in the briefing, we suggested that we'd like to see a reference in this plan to the transit plan. Do you know if that modification has been captured?
I don't know whether that is.
So I just want to make sure that gets captured, Russell, before we see this up for a vote. That's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
So, thank you.
So Stan, are you still making your motion?
Yes.
Okay, and Derek, you're good with that as a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? Lisa?
I want to be sure that that is noted, that we want to see that when it comes, seconding what Stan said.
All those in favor with the inclusion of what Stan was talking about with the Transportation Master Plan? Transit Master Plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes. The next item that we have for public hearing.
Did we vote on closing the public hearing?
Yes. We did.
I must have been silent. Sorry.
Our next item is 2, and it's grant application submissions. It's B2 through B8. I have 2 cards from individuals that would like to speak in regards to this. If you would like to speak in regards to the grant application submission, we have counsel ready at the waitings to bring you some cards. George Chapman, followed by Dave Iltis.
Okay, my biggest concern about this is practically nobody knew about this. I reached out to the community councils. I shouldn't have to do this. But when I reached out to them, they didn't know what the heck was going on. And I recognize that these grant proposals for the Beck Street cycle track, which normally I wouldn't have a problem with, or the Connor and Wasatch Drive cut-through on Bonneville Hills Golf Course, these are part of the bike plan. Okay, you approved it. I understand that. But the community council should be part of this. And so I know some of the community councils had no idea about this, and they should be notified about this. There's practically no information about it other than if you read the bike plan. Let's go back to Beck Street specifically. If you want to actually help bicycling on Beck Street, you need to make sure every gravel pit truck getting out of all those gravel pits is covered and doesn't throw off any rocks. Because you put in a cycle track there, the rocks are just going to build up on the cycle track unless every few hours you sweep it. And I don't think you're prepared for that. I think you should be sweeping Beck Street every day because it's that bad. And there are a lot of bicyclists that ride there. So that's what I'm asking for. You have a big problem with community outreach still. So I'm asking you to postpone the grant public hearings on this until the community councils have a chance to weigh in on it. And the Bonneville Hills Golf Course is another issue. They should be able to weigh in on this. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And I don't, oh, Dave's here, good. You were hidden in the corner. Couldn't see you.
Hi again. So on the Beck Street plan, I think there are a couple issues with this. One is, in general, I'm in favor of this proposal to put cycle tracks on in this area. The agenda item, however, is very, very unclear as to where the cycle tracks are going to be. My understanding is it's actually going to be more between kind of the area of Chicago Street, north from there to where the existing bike path is between Salt Lake and North Salt Lake. It's, however, extraordinarily unclear from the document. George is correct on Beck Street proper, that needs to be swept more. It's a UDOT road. But hand in hand with this, you need to look at improving the bike lanes that are on Beck Street and adding the cycle track between the north end of Beck Street and the existing Class 1 bike path in that area. Lastly, this grant, it's a great idea, but not very well fleshed out, and needs to have not only a reduction in speed limits on Beck Street, but also bike lanes need to be added between North Temple and 6 South to make this a complete network instead of the general disaster that it is right now. So I would say please do approve this, but you need more information on this, and it needs to be made available to the public because it's not. So thank you.
I don't have any other comment cards. Mr. Webster, if you'd come forward and then fill out a card as soon as you're done. And you have 2 minutes.
I know. You know, I found out about the grant situation with Bonneville Golf Course yesterday. The golf pro at Bonneville found out about it from me today, about 10 o'clock in the morning. I heard about it from Ellen Reddick, who said she heard about it 2 days ago. And George is absolutely right. There's been no opportunity for community collaboration, let's call it that. And I'd also like to talk about the image of the city. For years and years, Bonneville Golf Course was regarded as the top 10 public course in the country. Now it's not even on anybody's chart. Dee Dee destroyed a lot of that character with the development of those condos. There's been other things that have happened. The fact that we're preserving the, for whatever reason, they're sacred, those Little League diamonds that are used between 10 and 12 times a year, probably by people from Kearns. I've talked to Coach Mike. He didn't know anything about it. This is just unbelievable that, we're pushing forward an agenda where we're talking about $700,000+. I have absolutely no idea where that's coming from. It certainly is excessive for what needs to be done. I'm talking about an extra bridge. Everybody's just trying to put the pieces together. I've been barraged today by emails from a lot of concerned people, and apparently this is the first they've heard about it as well. So I endorse what George has said. We need to postpone, and we need to have a full disclosure of where these ideas are coming from, what are the qualifications of people who are making these suggestions, and what are the impacts to the neighborhoods and the golfers and the image of the city when we've destroyed, the standing of Bonneville Golf Course in so many ways. This would be the last straw. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. And Cindy, you have some clarification?
Yes. Actually, maybe we haven't gone about this the right way, but I want to assure everyone that this is not a surprise at the end of a process. What this is for the council had been looking for a way to get more exposure to the grants that are being applied for by the city. So previously it was that the whatever administration was in office at the time would apply for grants, and then some of those grants they would receive, and then the council would be asked to appropriate the money, and the council didn't know anything about them, and at that point there was a grant award in place. So what this is what we were trying to do is to create a way to get early notice, so that as soon as the administration put pen to paper and started to ask for when you're asking for a grant, you ask for the moon, and then you hope to get a small piece of it. So that's what this is to try to get some additional opportunity for feedback and that type of a thing. So we've been doing it for about a year. This is about the second time we've had a lot of frustration about it. It has served the purpose of getting more information out to people, but we haven't been, maybe, I can see that we could work with the administration and modify the process. But so the odds of getting these grants, same as getting any grant, might not be 1 penny. Just the hope of getting some money for something relating to these topics.
And just to clarify, if we were awarded the grants, we would absolutely come back and discuss it, correct?
Yes, there are some cases where if the grant has a pressing deadline or something like that, then the council has an appropriation to allow the administration to move ahead so grant monies aren't lost. But generally the council, they'll come up in a budget opening or something like that, and there will be another public hearing. And by that time, there has been community discussion and that type of thing.
Okay.
But we can work on this more.
Mr. Penfold.
And Mr. Chair and Cindy is safe. that this is the beginning of a grant application process to suggest that there's plenty of opportunity to talk to corresponding members of the administration about the project, the proposal, the application process. So perhaps we could, in the future, reference who the contact person is in a different division for each of these grants so that we can refer people to that person when they see this notification.
And a few years ago, the council did, I'll just add, encourage the administration to be very aggressive in applying for grants to maximize any opportunities that might exist out there from foundations and that type of things to reduce the amount of taxpayer money that's needed.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close this public hearing and defer action to a future meeting.
Second.
A motion's been made by Councilmember Penfold and second by Councilmember Kitchen. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Okay.
And that would be that we close the public hearing for grant application items B2 through B8, except for item B7. And for item B7, the Bonneville Connector Trail, I move that we close the public hearing, but ask that if the city is awarded funds for it, that we make sure that the council has the opportunity to discuss additional public outreach and input opportunities in the context of a budget amendment.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Adams.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Penfold. Any discussion?
Yes, can I get clarification?
Sure.
Councilmember, you have just put some conditions on grant application number 8, but you still have closed it and moved it forward.
Yeah, close the public hearing because the public hearing is only about should we apply for the grant, not are we doing the project.
Just want to make sure I was clear about that.
And
I'm good with that additional criteria.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. We are moving on to potential action items. Number 1 is the residential dwelling unit legalization.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the ordinance.
Is there a second?
I'll second it if you're talking about ADUs.
Let me read it for you. I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending section 21A.52 of the Salt Lake City Code pertaining to residential dwelling unit legalization pursuant to petition PLN PCM 2015-00142.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Penfold and a second by Councilmember Mendenhall. Any discussion? I actually requested information in regards to the Utah Apartment Association, if we'd reached out to them to find out any information from them, and I don't think that we have heard back or if there's been any outreach made. Anyone going to come and see what's going on? Nick Tarvett?
The council staff has not reached out to them, so we can still go ahead and do that. I apologize. I may have missed that. Or I did miss that, obviously.
So, council members, I would feel more comfortable if we would wait to hear back from a stakeholder like the Utah Apartment Association, just to get a pitch from them and feel what they are, if they're comfortable or not with it.
So,
Mr.
Chair, if I may.
Stan and then Aaron.
So my impression is that most of these unit legalization issues are single-family residences with illegal dwellings attached. So, I'm just wondering if it's going to be something that the Apartment Association is really going to care about.
No clue, but I just feel like we need to reach out to them just in case.
And I feel like we don't, because it isn't new, and it's something that we've done in the past, and that's part of our agenda, but Nick could probably speak to it more. It's something that happened and sunsetted, and we're deciding that it was worthwhile and we should bring it back. And there were years that it was happening, and we haven't heard from them then or since that we've been made aware of.
Yes, that is all true.
Great.
We can, if you'd like to table it, the council has that option. We can send out a notice to them request their feedback, and then when we receive that, we could bring it back to the council for consideration, or we could send them the new ordinance if you choose to adopt it tonight. Again, I apologize for missing that.
Well, I really can't make a motion, but I would prefer that we wait until we hear back from them, just to reach out.
I don't think it's necessary, so I'm going to keep my second on whoever made that motion.
Well, I would feel comfortable reaching out personally, especially in context of this is prior to 1995, and we're going to be talking about post-1995, make sure everyone's at the table. So as part of that process moving forward, I would agree with the chair.
So, Mr. Chair, here's the deal. I don't want to delay this, and I don't want to delay it based on waiting for a response from any organization, because we have had a public process. However, if we could consider adding this to the limited formal meeting that we've scheduled for next week and provide an opportunity to provide them with, to see if they want to have any comment, I'd be willing to consider doing that. So, with that consideration, that this will be on the agenda for approval at our limited formal meeting next week, and I think we can do that. Cindy, I want to make sure.
You can put it on. If you were to open it for verbal comment, you'd need to open it for all parties, but we would invite written comment.
I don't think we're looking for verbal comment. I think we're looking for written comment.
Okay, thanks.
I got a clarification.
Yep.
So just written comment. So if that is acceptable and that's our intent, I withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Stan.
Promise?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Everyone feel comfortable with that?
No.
Other than Aaron. Lisa, are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with it, but I do feel like if they read the paper or look at our agenda, they've been aware, and no one's made any effort to talk to us about it, and we brought it up in work session. So I'm comfortable, but I'm not thrilled, as long as it's next week.
Yeah, it'll be next week. Aaron's not. Derek, are you okay with that?
I am okay with that.
Stan is, Andrew is, and I am as well. All right, thank you, and we will put this on for action next week in the limited formal meeting. Item number 2, vacating subdivisions at the Salt Lake City International Airport.
Mr. Chair, I move the council adopt an ordinance vacating housing subdivisions and portions of housing subdivisions located within the boundaries of Salt Lake City International Airport as described in the agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made by Councilmember Mendenhall and second by Councilmember Adams. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes. We are on to item number, Section D, comments to the City Council. I have a few cards here. And we'll be taking general comments tonight, and we'll call people based on the comment cards that have been turned in that I have in my hand. If you would like to address the council but have not filled out a card, please raise your hand. Staff will bring a card around to you. Please be respectful during other people's comments. No loud noises or other disruptions. Do not block other people's views. And here we go. Douglas Cotant, followed by Jim Webster.
I've asked Chief Brown to investigate for me because somebody made a rule, I don't know who it was, because last Tuesday one of the plainclothes officers told me that Councilwoman Adams was no longer allowed to drive me home from the council meetings. So I've asked Chief Brown to look into this, because I was absolutely irritated about this all week long, to the point where last Saturday I had a thought of something that I would never do. That was something to the point where I thought about taking my own life, but I'm not going to do it. And so I will probably talk to my bishop about this Sunday. And also, I want to say that if Stupski was the one that made this rule, then I suggest she be fired. And I also suggest that since she created a $644,908 budget shortfall, she needs to be fired about that one too. And I'm hoping that Chief Brown investigates my question and gets back to me so we can settle this situation. Secondly, the elevator is working, but my manager, Thomas Crawford, is upset with me, and to the point where he won't speak to me. And
Time.
I know. I'm just afraid that when I pay my rent tomorrow, I'm afraid he might tear up the check. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotain. Mr. Webster.
Stepping on George's feet. Cindy, I apologize. I just didn't understand that's the situation, but it sure surprised an awful lot of us, and there was enough detail in there that it appeared that it was something that was that had come onto the scene. I'd like to talk a little bit about, I suppose it covers all of these areas. It's the image of the city. I'm going to say I'm a victim, I guess, of the Chevron oil spill, along with all of my neighbors. If you go from our street from 9th South, you have one death at 9th South related to the oil spill. You have myself, who's been diagnosed with multiple myeloma. You have a number of other people who have respiratory and other problems that are absolutely related to that oil spill. So the city was blessed with a tremendous amount of money to rectify that situation, and I think used it inappropriately. Okay? There was very little opportunity for those of us who live on the creek to address our concerns with respect to trees, for instance. Just talk about, I don't know how many times I've come in here and given you a biannual report on the trees in Miller Park, but there's been an absolute devastation of trees, 400 to 600 trees, notably the black locust, which were totally, it's a subject of a cleansing, I guess, of some sort. And the problem with that is that when you poison a black locust, you poison all the trees in the neighborhood. And I've alerted the city to that. Nothing was done. An image of the city, 5th and 6th South, the duplex coming into this city, whether it's part of the downtown master plan or whatever, it's just been absent any sort of consideration in terms of what is it like to enter Salt Lake City. Going to Provo is a much more pleasant experience. You feel invited, whether you're coming in on University or anything else. Center Street isn't so great, maybe, but it's a better situation than what we've got. And I've lived here since '76 and have wondered and scratched my head that entire time, why don't we do something to improve that access with some trees? Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Mathis, followed by George Chapman.
So you might have thought I was here to speak on the master plan, but I like to keep you guessing, not knowing what I might pop up to talk about at any given time. I'm here because I spoke with a downtown property owner this morning in a meeting that we had about the 5th West medians and some of the challenges that we have down there. One of the issues we have is that people are spending a lot of time down there. Often people think that they're homeless people who are camped out on those medians, but frequently I think they're people who are traveling to our urban center to purchase drugs, get strung out on heroin, and spend the day down there. I don't know what the answer is. I think it's an incredibly complicated and difficult problem. But I told the proprietor at the Rio Grande Cafe in a meeting this morning that I would come and make sure that you were aware of it. So I am doing that now. I don't know if there's a possibility of perhaps changing the designation of those medians so that it is not just public space, so that people can't take naps there constantly, but anything that you can do, we would be very appreciative of. And I also just want to say thanks for the work that you do. Sitting through your meeting tonight reminds me that much of what you do is a difficult task, and I, as a constituent and a citizen of Salt Lake City, just want to let you know how grateful I am for the work that you do and the effort that you put in. Thanks very much.
Okay, so we have almost $1 billion more to spend on the airport. Mary, you're absolutely right. We should be prioritizing projects. But the tracks reconfiguration at the airport is going to suck $55 million probably out of local bus expansion. What happened? Well, there's a law in Utah because Delta wanted to protect airport passenger fees, but airport passenger fees can actually be used for rail or fixed guideway projects, except in Utah. So I'm asking the mayor and the council to ask the legislature to change the law so that the almost $1 billion extra we have to spend at the airport, $100 million can be used for the tracks reconfiguration, which should cost about $55 million, and extend tracks to the airport, or to International Center. This is a perfect chance to do it. Also, you might consider, if you really have to have a rail project downtown, another one, you might consider realigning the Green Line to continue on 2nd West to North Temple. That would give you another rail line, and it'd be a whole lot cheaper than a brand new line. So please prioritize projects like the mayor asked for, and don't make us pay for tracks reconfiguration out of bus expansion service. Thanks for listening.
Marie Taylor, followed by Dave Iltis.
Kind of going to bounce around a little. First of all, I'm really happy that Doug didn't never ever come back and that he came tonight. And then I think you all know how I feel about the 1995 date. Just want to let you guys know there are 11 comments in the unit legalization packet if you haven't had a chance to look at them. And I'm not quite sure why all the policemen are here, but I know that there were a lot of protesters a few weeks ago, and there was an incident not in Salt Lake, but about 15 years ago, where my husband had been stopped and then reached in his backpack to get a pair of gloves, and the officer pulled a gun out. And fortunately, I'm grateful that the split-second decision that that officer made was to not shoot. So I realize that you guys are in a tough situation, and we just want you safe and want everybody else safe. I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that the Board of Adjustment was dissolved by the city, because I feel that many issues that used to go to the Board of Adjustment are simply being handled via administrative appeal. And then there's a small note at the bottom that says you have 10 days to respond. And the way that a person can respond to an administrative interpretation is that they have to pay about $300 with the appeal fee and the noticing. The state ombudsman will go over a land use dispute for $150, and that's a legislative mandate, or they feel like that is reasonable. When the Board of Adjustment was dissolved at the Planning Commission, or I'm sorry, at their meeting on February 28th of 2011, Mary Ann Pickering, senior planner, stated that the primary change was to give the special exception approval to the Planning Commission, and Nick Norris stated under the proposal only the designing body would be changed, but things are not going to the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Ms. Taylor. Dave Iltis, followed by Doug Danzy. And these are the last two cards that I have. So if anyone would like to make a comment, staff can bring a card to you.
Hi, my name is Dave Iltis. I'm with Cycling Utah. Wanted to address the council tonight about a letter I wrote to the council that I haven't received any response from either the council or the administration on regarding complete streets. And you were given a presentation in December on complete streets and progress over the last 2 years. And in particular, there are a couple streets that the reasons given for not making those streets complete were completely and utterly inadequate. First South, 7 South, and 13 South, the ordinance, Salt Lake City's Complete Streets ordinance was, as far as I can tell, completely ignored. First South, the reason given is we have a streetcar maybe going in. There's no funding for the streetcar, but maybe we'll do that so we won't put bike lanes on First South. 7 South is one of the widest streets in Salt Lake, and there are no bike lanes on that, despite that having been resurfaced recently. That really is probably the most egregious miss on the Complete Streets ordinance. And then lastly on this, UDOT roads are, they're the elephant in the room in Salt Lake City. Most UDOT roads are wide enough to have complete streets. They need to be reconfigured with narrower lane widths and lower speed limits and make our city a nicer place to walk and to bike. But this is going to require higher level communication from the mayor's office and from the council to UDOT, because I don't think that UDOT is going to listen unless the council and the mayor's office have a direct communication with UDOT to say, hey, it's time to change the way we're doing business here. 7th East, for example, has a completely silly shero on that. And then lastly, just I would hope you would, in the budget considerations, double the budget for bikes as you're coming up here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iltis. Doug Danzy.
Hi, my name is Doug Danzy. I've lived around here for about 6 decades, worked in Salt Lake for about 4 decades, not always at the same place, and lived here for about 3 decades. And you probably see me around. What you may not know about me is that I like to ski. I've been trying to learn French. I garden, have a life, but also outside of work, I work in a lot of recovery work with men who deal with substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, and sexual abuse issues. I wasn't here when you had the hearings on Harvey Milk Boulevard, and I have no expectation that anything will change. But I do know that according to his biography, he had a penchant for adolescent boys, and at one time, when he was in his 30s, his boyfriend was a 16-year-old runaway. And all I really want to say is that's not okay. And pretending that it didn't happen is not okay. And thank you for your time.
That's the last comment I have this evening to the City Council. We're moving on to item E, new business, which is we will consider the advice and consent of the Salt Lake City Police Department Police Chief Mike Brown.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we suspend the rules and adopt the recommendation of the mayor to appoint Police Chief Mike Brown.
Second.
There's a motion been made by Councilmember Penfold and seconded by Councilmember Mendenhall. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I don't know if this is necessarily discussion, except I'm really pleased to have Chief Brown be the nominee from the mayor's office. I think he's proven his value and commitment to the city, and I'm delighted to vote in favor of this motion.
Anyone else?
I'm thrilled.
Stan is thrilled. Aaron's thrilled. The only one that isn't here to be thrilled is Charlie Luke. He is out of town and sent me an email and asked that I read it publicly, and I will supply the recorder with a copy of this email. I want to publicly note my support for the appointment of Mike Brown as chief of the Salt Lake City Police Department. During his interim appointment, Chief Brown was very helpful in working with neighbors and me to develop some unique tactics to address neighborhood-specific criminal activities in District 6. I look forward to his permanent appointment. The Salt Lake Police Association has raised some issues that I encourage the association and Chief Brown to work together to resolve as soon as possible. Having worked closely with Chief Brown and the Salt Lake Police Association, I am confident they will effectively resolve their issues and accomplish more together on behalf of Salt Lake City Police Department and the people of Salt Lake City. And I'd like to echo Charlie's statements as well, that I'm excited for Chief Brown to not be interim anymore, that he can actually do what needs to be done and not have to worry about what lies beneath, right? So that being said, any other discussion? All those in favor for the advice and consent of Chief Brown as Chief of Police of Salt Lake City Police Department, give me a vote of confidence. We'll roll call this. How about that? We'll make it even better. Lisa Adams. Yes. Aaron Mendenhall.
Yes.
Derek Kitchen.
Yes.
Stan Penfold.
Yes.
Andrew Johnston.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So Police Chief Mike Brown. All right. New business item 2, which is the tentative budget of the Salt Lake City, including the tentative budget of the library fund.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the tentative budget for the city and Salt Lake City Library, and I'd like to speak to my motion. Should there be a second?
Second.
Second by Council Member Penfold and second by Council Member Mendenhall. Please stand.
I just realized, do I need to suspend the rules? Do I need to make that modification to my motion? To suspend the rules, and is that acceptable to my second? I would modify my motion to suspend the rules and adopt the tentative budgets. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Mr. Chair, I look forward to our healthy discussion that the mayor suggested and implied in her speech this evening. We have 6 weeks, basically, to approve our budget. A very normal and, in fact, a legally required part of this process is that we adopt a tentative budget for both the library and Salt Lake City. So at this point, we're adopting the tentative budget that was proposed to us by the mayor this evening. I want to assure the public that this is the beginning of a very open and public process, and our expectation from the council is that we want to hear from people about their thoughts concerning the budget. In fact, we have 2 public hearings that we will be scheduling later tonight in our consent agenda, one for May 24th and another one for June 7th. Those are really important opportunities for us to gather input from the public about what you think our priorities should be for the budget. So I look forward to a lot of hard work over the next 6 weeks, but I'm actually encouraged by the direction that we've all been talking in relationship to our priorities.
Any other further discussion? Councilmember Mendenhall?
No, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to item number 3. This is Stan's favorite thing to do.
Oh, I love to do this.
I just teed it up for you.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council recess and reconvene as the Board of Directors of the Local Building Authority.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Penfold and second by Councilmember Kitchen. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are now the Local Building Authority.
Mr. Chair, as the Local Building Authority, I move that we approve a resolution adopting the tentative budget for the Capital Projects Fund of the Local Building Authority for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2016 and ending June 30th, 2017.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold and second by Councilmember Mendenhall. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board set a public hearing date of May 24th, 2016 to accept public comment regarding a resolution adopting the final budget of the capital projects fund of the local building authority of Salt Lake City for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2016 and ending June 30th, 2017.
There's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
There were a lot that came there at the end. Who did it first? Derek. All right. Motion by Councilmember Penfold, second by Councilmember Kitchen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board approve the minutes of our March 1st, 2016 meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold, second by Councilmember Kitchen. All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Directors adjourn and reconvene as the Salt Lake City Council, as if by magic.
Second.
There's a motion been made by Councilmember Penfold and second by Councilmember Kitchen. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion carries as well. We are on to item number 4. 5.
No, F1.
F1.
Yeah, I thought that we've got.
If we're on F1, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
If we're on F1, I just need a clarification. It is right? Great. F1. All right, Councilmember Mendenhall, let's hear it.
I move that the council adopt a resolution expressing support of land acquisition for open space and spending of open space bonds.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Mendenhall and second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
that motion carries. On to item F2.
Mr. Chair.
Yes?
I move that the council adopt the resolution authorizing the approval of an interlocal cooperation programming and funding agreement among Salt Lake City Corporation, Park City Municipal Corporation, and Summit County relating to a renewable energy and energy choice partnership.
Second.
Great. Motion by Councilmember Mendenhall and second by Councilmember Kitchen to adopt. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion carries as well. We are on to item G, our consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold, second by Councilmember Mendenhall to adopt the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. And we are on to item H, which means we are over. We are adjourned.